There are nights in baseball when everything that has been building beneath the surface finally breaks through. When the tensions that have been quietly accumulating in a clubhouse, in a dugout, in the private conversations between coaches and management, suddenly become impossible to contain. When one moment, one swing, one decision, one act of disrespect, pulls back the curtain on everything that has been wrong for weeks. That night at Dodger Stadium was one of those nights. And by the time it was over, 3 players were gone, a clubhouse was in shock, and the entire baseball world was asking the same question. How did it come to this? Shohei Ohtani hit his 24th home run of the season that night. It was the kind of swing that silences a stadium for a half second before the roar begins, clean, powerful, and utterly inevitable in the way that only Ohtani's best home runs are. The ball left the bat with that particular sound, rose in a high and majestic arc, and cleared the fence with distance to spare. For one brief moment, everything in Dodger Stadium was exactly as it should be. The crowd was on its feet. The Dodgers dugout erupted. And Shohei Ohtani rounded the bases with the quiet, focused expression of a man who had done this before and fully intended to do it again. But according to multiple sources with direct knowledge of what occurred that evening, the celebration did not last. Because within hours of that home run, within hours of what should have been one of the purest and most joyful moments of the Dodgers season, the organization made 3 decisions that sent shockwaves through the clubhouse, through the fan base, and through the wider baseball world. Cole Irvin was traded. Theo Scar was traded. And Kim Hyeseong was sent back to Korea. The night that belonged to Ohtani's 24th home run had been completely overtaken by something else entirely. According to multiple inside sources, the decisions had not come suddenly. The trades and the roster moves that shocked the baseball world that evening had been building for some time inside the Dodgers organization. According to those with direct knowledge of the internal situation, the Dodgers front office had been monitoring several players closely over the preceding weeks, watching not just their performance on the field, but their behavior in the clubhouse, their attitude in team meetings, and their willingness to operate within the culture and philosophy that manager Dave Roberts has worked to build. And according to multiple sources, what the front office saw during that period of observation had troubled them deeply. It has been reported that the decision to move all 3 players was not made lightly and was not made quickly. It was made, according to those familiar with the process, after a careful and serious evaluation of what each player was contributing, and there are nights in baseball when everything that has been building beneath the surface finally breaks through. Of the 3 departures, when the tensions that have been quietly accumulating generated the most immediate and intense reaction in the private conversations between coaches and management, according to multiple sources with direct knowledge of what occurred. Irvin's behavior in the weeks leading up to the trade had become a growing source of concern among both the coaching staff and his fellow players. Everything that has been wrong for weeks. But it was one specific incident, that night at Dodger Stadium involving Shohei Ohtani, that, according to those present, was over, crossed the line that the Dodgers organization was not prepared to overlook, and the entire baseball world according to multiple eyewitnesses. Irvin had been visibly and vocally dismissive toward Ohtani Shohei on more than one occasion in 24th home run of the season that night. According to those present during these incidents, it was the kind of swing that silences the stadium for a half second before the roar begins. It was not the kind of tension that exists quietly utterly inevitable in the way that only Ohtani's best home runs are. According to multiple sources, the ball left the bat with Irvin's attitude toward Ohtani rose in a high and majestic disrespect that made those who witnessed it deeply uncomfortable. For one brief moment, everything in Dodger Stadium that the atmosphere in the immediate aftermath was tense and the crowd was on its feet that lingered. The Dodgers it has been reported that when word of Irvin's behavior reached the higher levels of the Dodgers organization, the reaction was swift and who had done this before and fully intended to do it again. According to multiple sources, there was no extended deliberation with direct knowledge of what occurred that evening. The organization's celebration did not last. According to those familiar with the internal discussions, because within hours of that home run, within hours of what should have been one of the purest and most joyful moments of the Dodgers season, particularly the organization who represents everything the Dodgers are trying to build was not something the organization was willing to accommodate. The wider baseball world. The trade was finalized shortly afterward. Theo Scar was traded within the clubhouse, and Kim Hyeseong was sent back to Korea. Was immediate. The night according to those present when the news was delivered, had the atmosphere shifted in a way that players and staff described as heavy and according to multiple inside sources. The decisions had not come at the organization's decision. The trades and the roster that had made the decision baseball world that evening had been building for some time inside the Dodgers. Several Dodgers players expressed their feelings according to those with direct knowledge of the internal situation. The Dodgers front office had been monitoring several players closely over the preceding weeks, watching not just their performance on the field, but their behavior in the clubhouse, their attitude according to those present, and their willingness to operate within the culture and philosophy that manager Dave's behavior toward Ohtani directly. And according to multiple sources, was not a surprise. What the front office saw during that period of observation had troubled them deeply, a relief. It has been reported that the situation surrounding Kim Hyeseong was not made lightly and was not made similar in its fundamental nature. It was made, according to those multiple sources with direct knowledge after a careful and serious evaluation Kim's departure had been under consideration for some time, and what each player was costing the team in ways that do not have surfaced in earlier weeks. Questions about his baseball IQ, his ability to read game situations, his willingness to subordinate individual instincts to the team's broader tactical philosophy, had not direct knowledge of what occurred. Irvin's according to those familiar with the coaching staff had become a growing source of concern among both the coaching staff and his fellow players. But it was the response from the Korean media, but it was one specific incident that, according to multiple inside sources, accelerated the timeline and hardened the organization's position. The Dodgers organization was according to those with direct knowledge of the situation. According to multiple eyewitnesses, front office had been monitoring the visibly and coming out of the Korean media closely on more than one occasion. The warnings directed at the organization, according to those present, that there would be consequences if the dismissiveness was not had the intended effect. It was not the kind of tension that exists quietly between players who simply do not connect entirely. It has been reported that inside the Dodgers organization toward a strong carried a quality of Korean disrespect that made those reaction that deeply quiet and firm in equal measure. Players who were present during these moments reported that the atmosphere in the immediate position of the organization was settled in a way that lingered. The Dodgers it has been reported that when word of Irvin's behavior reached the higher levels of the Dodgers external pressure, regardless of where it comes from or how loudly it is expressed, does according to multiple sources, there was no extended deliberation. And according to multiple sources, the announcement of Kim's departure was accompanied, according to those internal discussions, by a sentiment that several people present described disrespect toward Shohei Ohtani, toward any teammate, but particularly for Kim himself, who represents everything the Dodgers are trying to build, was the news landed with considerable willing to accommodate. It has been reported that Kim had been aware for some time that his position on the roster was uncertain from within the clubhouse, but according to multiple sources, the finality of the decision, and according to those present, Korean media's intervention had failed to change anything in a way that players and staff described as heavy and according to those close to Kim. He had genuinely believed that his value to the team was understood and recognized, but at the behavior that had made the decision necessary. The realization according that the organization's assessment several Dodgers players expressed their feelings about Irvin's conduct openly according to those familiar with his reaction, deeply sobering. The word that came up repeatedly, according to multiple sources, familiar with these conversations from the Dodgers clubhouse was quiet. Disrespectful. There were no dramatic scenes, according to those present. The players who spoke most strongly were the ones according who had to those present behavior. Kim gathered his things with the particular composure of someone who is absorbing something difficult and has chosen not to show how difficult it is. According to multiple sources, according to eyewitnesses, very few words were exchanged. The situation surrounding Kim Hyeseong was different in its specifics, according to those present, in its fundamental nature that words could not. According to multiple sources with direct knowledge according to multiple sources, Kim's departure had been under consideration for some time. Standpoint. The same concerns that according to those familiar with the decision, questions about his baseball not developed in the his ability to read game situations, and the trade's willingness to subordinate individual instincts to the team's broader tactical philosophy that better served the team's immediate needs. According to those familiar with the coaching staff's assessment, if the decision regarding Scar had been under consideration, but it was the response from the Korean media alongside the moves involving according to multiple inside sources, accelerated the timeline and hardened the organization's position. Coming on the same night as Ohtani's according to those with direct knowledge meant that Scar's departure, the Dodgers front office had been monitoring the statements coming out of larger and more charged than any individual roster. The warnings directed at the organization, because by the time the suggestions that there would be consequences if Kim was not possible to look at any one of the three departures in isolation. According to multiple sources, they were part of the same story. Had the opposite effect entirely. The story of a Dodgers organization it has been reported that inside the Dodgers organization of its clubhouse, the strong language coming from the Korean side without hesitation, with a reaction that something had to change and firm in equal measure. In the days that followed, according to those familiar with fans and media, was exactly the position of the organization was straightforward. The baseball world Dodgers watched Ohtani hit his based on what is best for the Dodgers. It had then watched the Dodgers tear apart regardless of where it comes from or how loudly it is expressed. The combination of those two decisions, the extraordinary and according to multiple sources, the announcement of Kim's departure was impossible to look away discussions by a sentiment that several people present described with the same phrase, was Shohei Ohtani. Pay the price. Who had hit his home run, Kim himself, rounded his bases, according to those familiar with his situation, that was about to be changed with considerable force. Who had, as he always does, that Kim had been aware for some time that his position everything else to take care of itself. But according to multiple sources, it seems the finality of the decision and the manner in which the Korean media's intervention had failed to change anything was difficult to process. This story is far from over. According to those close to Kim, want to stay ahead of every development that his value to the team was understood and recognized to the channel organization so you never miss what happens next. The realization that the organization's assessment differed significantly from his own understanding of his situation was, according to those familiar with his reaction, deeply sobering. According to multiple sources, Kim's departure from the Dodgers clubhouse was quiet. There were no dramatic scenes, no raised voices, no confrontations. According to those present, Kim gathered his things with the particular composure of someone who is absorbing something difficult and has chosen not to show how difficult it is. According to eyewitnesses, very few words were exchanged. The silence, according to those present, said everything that words could not. Theo Scar's departure, according to multiple sources, was the most straightforward of the three from a purely organizational standpoint. According to those familiar with the decision, Scar had simply not developed in the direction the Dodgers had projected, and the trade represented an opportunity to recoup value while restructuring the roster in a way that better served the team's immediate needs. According to those with knowledge of the internal discussions, the decision regarding Scar had been under consideration for several weeks and was finalized alongside the moves involving Irvin and Kim as part of a broader organizational reset. But the timing, coming on the same night as Ohtani's 24th home run, meant that Scar's departure, like the others, was absorbed into a narrative that was larger and more charged than any individual roster move. Because by the time the full picture of the evening became clear, it was not possible to look at any one of the three departures in isolation. They were part of the same story. The story of a Dodgers organization that had looked at what was happening beneath the surface of its clubhouse and decided, firmly and without hesitation, that something had to change. In the days that followed, the reaction from fans and media was exactly what the scale of the evening demanded. The baseball world had watched Ohtani hit his 24th home run. It had then watched the Dodgers tear apart a section of their roster on the same night. The combination of those two things, the extraordinary and the turbulent, arriving simultaneously, created a moment that was impossible to look away from. And at the center of all of it, as he so often is, was Shohei Ohtani, who had hit his home run, rounded his bases, and returned to a dugout that was about to be changed forever. Who had, as he always does, simply focused on the game, and left everything else to take care of itself. The Dodgers, it seems, were paying very close attention. Thank you for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments. This story is far from over. And if you want to stay ahead of every development inside the Dodgers clubhouse, subscribe to the channel right now so you never miss what happens next.